Denver Broncos are trying to get as healthy as possible for Thursday night football. They held a walkthrough on Tuesday that was open to the media. But did we see Riley Moss and other players who are on the injury report present? We'll break that down and much more on today's brand new episode of Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it is your team every single day. We appreciate you so much, all the everydayers and all the first listeners out there in Broncos Country who tune in to make us part of your day however you choose to do so. Thank you so much. We got you covered every single day, all year long. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. You can check out my written work over there at milehighsports.com. You can check out film breakdowns over on their YouTube page where I do them over there. Joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. Also, writer over there at the NFL Spin Zone. And here's what we got in store for you here today on this show. Broncos Country will wrap things up by talking about how the Broncos can clinch a playoff spot here this week. And there's a chance after Sunday they can even move into the 5th seed based on if things go a certain way for them. And on top of that, we'll take a look at the state of the AFC as we approach Week 16 of the National Football League. We'll kick things off on today's show by highlighting some of the latest injury updates as well. The Broncos held their only walkthrough practice of the week open to the media, were certain players available and spotted there. We'll break all that down here today on the show, which is brought to you by our friends over there at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Sarah, my friend, this is the biggest question of the week. How healthy will the Broncos be going into Thursday night football? Obviously, the Chargers, the Broncos, both teams a little bit banged up here, but this is going to set the stage for a win and you're in type of situation here. And Denver's hoping to go into everything fully healthy.
Yeah, you can't ask for a better scenario at this point in the season. Win and you make the playoffs. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's not the only way the Broncos can get into the playoffs this weekend, Cody, but obviously it's the easiest path. I mean, and by easiest, I mean, it's the one that's in your control. You don't have to worry about, well, will this team lose to this team or will this team come through for it? No, just go take care of business on Thursday night and get it done. You can wake up on Friday morning and be in the playoffs. But of course, injuries at this point in the season, they affect everybody. I know it was impressive to see last week, the Broncos injury report only had 2 guys on it until late in the week when I think another player popped up on for non-injury related reasons, but only 2 guys on the injury report. One of them was Brandon Jones, who played. The other one, Riley Moss, who didn't play. But now we're dealing with the possibility of, you know, what's going on with Pat Surtain and the ankle, what's going on with Riley Moss and the knee again this week against the Chargers. And, you know, who's going to step up in the absence of some of these players if the Broncos do end up needing to supplement, because they've been mostly healthy all year long, but guys have also stepped up when need be. Case in point, Chris Abrams-Draine this past weekend played a great game, but obviously we'd rather see number 21 and number 2 out there.
Yeah, and look, I think that there's a chance that could happen here for the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Denver held their only open practice to the media on Tuesday. It was a walkthrough practice there. So all we got to view, Sarah, was team stretch. There was no individual period. We watched team stretch, and then we had to go there. But I will say this, in terms of Tuesday's practice here, the Broncos had everybody accounted for. We saw Jaleel McLaughlin, who's on the injury report with a quad injury. We saw Pat Surtain II, who's on it with a minor ankle sprain. We saw Riley Moss in team stretch once again, which I think for us, we can't read too much into that right now because he was in team stretch all of last week. So that kind of leaves things up into question. If I had to guess, based on what I observed, I think Pat Surtain plays this week. I think that he's recovering really well. He's probably got that Wolverine blood in him. Obviously, his dad says he's got that Nolia blood in him. So he's grinding. He looked good in terms of that. Saw DJ Jones during practice as well. Saw John Franklin Myers. Saw Malcolm Roach. Saw Quinn Minor. So everybody that really was on the initial Monday injury report, because it was an estimation there, everybody was seen at practice, and they did some sort of involvement as well. But, you know, the tricky thing about Thursday night games, Sarah, is that your injury report on Tuesday, Wednesday will be the final one that you have to release to give your game statuses. It could go either way here, but the Broncos, I think, are trending towards DJ Jones being able to play. Pat Surtain, like these guys were not on the side field. The only two players that we saw on the side field prior to practice would be Sayre Bedinger and Delarian Turner-Yell, who's obviously done for the year because his 21-day window had expired. So the Broncos right now in a good position. And I will say this is just my observation, right? I felt like Riley Moss was moving well during the team stretch things, in terms of his footwork, looked well. Is that enough for him to be able to play on Thursday night? That's up in the air. That's going to be questionable. I think Riley will truly be questionable unless he continues to be a DNP and just continue to just be on the practice side of, hey, we're just going to stretch, but we're not going to do much. So that's the question. But I want to ask you this. Based on what you saw, because I know you've had a chance to go back and watch the L22 like I have, do you feel like even if Riley does not play this game and Pat plays, do you feel confident once again in Damari Mathis in the base and obviously Chris Abrams-Drain when the Broncos go into the nickel?
I do. I feel really confident. I feel like it's an opportunity, right? I mean, this is not a preseason game where you're getting a chance to evaluate guys and the consequence of the game is, well, there is no consequence. This is a game with playoff stakes, but you almost kind of welcome that opportunity for young guys, right? Because what happens if, Riley Moss does play in this game down the line, Chris Abrams-Drain might need to play in the playoffs as well. So, I mean, you might as well have him out there playing in a game that has playoff implications. And so obviously we all want to see Riley Moss back out there. He's having a breakout year for the Denver Broncos and is a huge asset to that secondary, not just in coverage, but man, the guy is tough. He is physical. He was playing really good against the Raiders. I think that's kind of gotten overshadowed. I know that was only his most recent game, but he was playing really good in the first half of that game leading up to the knee injury that he suffered. And so you just feel like, man, you want to see all those guys out there, but at the same time, you also like the idea of a player like Chris Abrams-Drain getting big game, opportunities and getting an opportunity to go up and say, hey, go make a play. Justin Herbert, he's going to try to test you because they don't want to throw at Pat Surtain. Teams don't want to do it. It's only happened 43 times in 13 games this season. Teams don't want to throw at Pat Surtain. They want to throw at Chris Abrams-Drain. Go make them pay, And so that's what I think is a great opportunity for any guy that's filling in as an injury replacement. The good news is that he proved in this most recent game that he's capable of doing it, unlike what we saw against Cleveland.
Man, I loved what I saw from the rookie cornerback. I mean, you talk about that deep ball that he broke up with Alec Pierce. He didn't panic on the double move. He got into position and got his hands played through the hands of Alec Pierce. And unfortunately, Alec Pierce suffered an injury there. We hope he's going to be okay. But then I just go back to that 4th and 6 play that he had a pass breakup on in terms of the Broncos are playing a little bit of palms coverage, which means that, you got a weak side safety blitz. PJ Locke was, they showed a too high look with Brandon Jones. PJ rolled down to blitz off of the defensive right side, offensive left. Brandon Jones climbed over to replace him in coverage. Jaquan McMillan dropped back to kind of play that other safety role where Brandon Jones was, and Jonathan Cooper played that middle hook while Chris Abrams-Drain's playing outside. He did a really good job of passing the vertical route off to Jaquan and then breaking at a good angle to drive on the out route there at the sticks. Fantastic play. I mean, you can tell when you watch the tape with Abrams-Drain, he's a high IQ football player. And look, I think if he were to get put into the game here on Thursday Night Football, I think he would play well. And I think that there might be an argument to be made that, hey, why not try to find a role for him now that he's getting his feet wet and he's playing well, he's playing smart, he's impacting the special teams game quite a bit. I liked what I saw from the rookie here. I think Quinn Miners is going to be all right. Obviously, we if there was something that were to pull him out of the game or prohibit him from playing, more than likely we'd probably see Alex Palczewski getting the start at right guard there. At running back, I think it's a little interesting too because Jaleel McLaughlin's got the quad injury, and after the game, I saw him. He was walking gingerly, but him being back at practice, being on the field, and doing stuff on Tuesday, I think is a great sign for him. But if that's the case, we already had this discussion about what do you do at running back? Do you activate and elevate Blake Watson from the practice squad? And Denver's been in that situation before, but they hadn't actually played him, and they just went with 2 running backs in that situation. So to me, I'm very, very curious with how Denver approaches this week here. But I know one thing is certain, Sayre. Like for Sean Payton, his belief is, and in terms of this, he gave this answer when Pat Surtain came back in the game on Sunday. He said, if the medical staff believes that they're good enough to play, they're going to play. We're not just going to sit you out and hold you out and try to hope. I think there are certain players that would maybe apply to, but primarily Sean Payton's like, if you're healthy enough to play, you're going to play. Because, hey, Denver hasn't secured anything just yet. A winning season's great. The playoff spot you want to clinch. That's what happens when you get, your next win. And Denver's hoping to do that here on Thursday Night Football. What does the rest of the AFC look like, and how does the playoff picture kind of shape out a little bit going into Week 16 of the NFL season? We're going to take a look at what's happening in the AFC here on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And as you all know at FanDuel, they are America's #1 sportsbook, and they want you to get ready to tackle the NFL action here in Week 16 and have a chance at a big return inside of FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Not only do you have Thursday Night Football where the Denver Broncos are traveling to take on the Los Angeles Chargers, but you have a wide slate of games happening all throughout the NFL this Sunday. Some big games with playoff implications, and FanDuel is the perfect place to be because you can sign up today as a brand new customer and you can bet $5 and you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So as you're watching the game and you get a hunch during the course of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at the College Football Playoffs on TNT, and it is that time of the year. It's the most exciting time of the year because college football playoffs, they are back, and the stakes have never been higher. With the brand new expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, and it opens up so many opportunities for the postseason in the college football side of things, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoffs begins on December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show, which is presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs will be battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Following that, the Clemson Tigers will look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be Quinn Ewers. There's going to be Arch Manning at quarterback. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max.
The Denver Broncos could be the 5th AFC team to officially punch their ticket to the playoff dance, but also there's a chance that their victory head-to-head against the Indianapolis Colts could end up being completely pointless. Cody and I, we're going to break down the state of the AFC and the craziness that is the playoff picture as of right now in today's NFL entering Week 16. But thank you so much, Broncos Country, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. If you haven't already done so, and hit subscribe on the show. We want to grow the audience here at Locked On Broncos and grow the community of first and everyday listeners. Cody, let's talk about the state of the AFC here, because obviously the Broncos have a chance on Thursday Night Football. Win, you're in. They would be the 5th team in the AFC to officially punch their ticket to the playoffs. Like I said, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Steelers, the Texans, they've already all done it. This is exciting place to be in if you're the Denver Broncos here entering Week 16.
Yeah, it is. And there's opportunity all around you. And it's nice to be at a point now since you and I have been covering this team. I mean, Sayre, we've been covering this team for a long, long time, and it's been really since the Super Bowl 50 season where we've had a chance to kind of sit down and say, hey, if the Broncos win this game, they're in the playoffs. They can clinch. It's been that long. And look, I think it'll be a fun experience for the everydayers and first listeners too, because we get to experience that kind of journey with them here as a team that everybody had written off in the offseason as a team that's not going to be very good. All of a sudden is one game away from a playoff spot. That's a pretty special place to be here. But, you know, you look at the rest of the AFC, it is the Wild West, essentially, when you look at it, right? Obviously, Kansas City, 13-1 right now. They're at the top of the AFC standings after Week 15 going here into Week 16. We all know Patrick Mahomes is banged up. The Buffalo Bills, they're 11-3 right now. You know, they rolled on Sunday against the Detroit Lions in what was a game that was a fun, electrifying shootout. But they're 2 games back at Kansas City. And right now with Patrick Mahomes' injury, I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs have to play the Texans, and then they have to play on Christmas Day against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there is a real possibility here that Buffalo and Kansas City could be vying for that 1 and 2 seed respectively between those guys right there. Pittsburgh, if they continue to win and Buffalo loses, there's a chance that they can obviously move up in the standings. So it's very, very interesting. Pittsburgh right now, number 3, they've got a big matchup here this week, Sayre, in Week 16. It's going to be them versus Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, which if you look at it right now, if the Broncos win, we'll dive into these situations, they'll improve to 10-5. The Ravens, if they lose to the Steelers, would drop to 9-6. So without getting into what we're going to talk about in segment 3, that's something to watch for. And Sayre, the Houston Texans can thank the Denver Broncos for helping them clinch a playoff spot. I mean, they're going to face some tough games here down in these final 3 games for them, but unfortunately, they're not going to really move anywhere because they've won their division. So, they're going to stay probably at that 4 seed. And I think the 5 seed here for the Broncos is something you want to continue to eye here. That, anyone who's the 5th seed right now is eyeing that. So I look at the AFC right now. Very, very tough. But it's the teams still on the outside, Sayre, that aren't officially out of it just yet. Even though the Denver won and Miami lost, they beat the Colts. The Bengals still hanging around there, though.
They are. The Bengals are, and the Broncos, obviously, now that we have a chance to talk about it officially, the Broncos will travel to face the Bengals on Saturday, December 28th at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Excuse me for not bringing up Mountain Time right away. 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time for all of you Colorado-based listeners of the show, but we here on Central Time. Cody, that's an interesting matchup if the Broncos lose to the Chargers on Thursday, but we know we're manifesting a win against the Chargers. We're manifesting the Broncos already being in the postseason at that point. The Bengals, though, they do continue to lurk, and they play at home at noon against the Cleveland Browns this weekend at Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So, I mean, you look at games that are kind of gimmies across the league right now, and nothing is given in the NFL. Of course, everybody gets paid to play, but I would reckon that the Bengals are going to be able to beat the Dorian Thompson-Robinson-led Cleveland Browns, which means that they are going to hang in the picture for another week, which makes it even more important for the Denver Broncos to just go take care of business on Thursday night. I mean, that's easier said than done. Just go take care of business. Easy for me to say sitting here, you just go to Los Angeles and beat the Chargers. I know the Chargers are also fighting for a playoff spot, and they've already beaten you this year, but just go take care of business. Easy for me to say. But look, this is one of those types of situations where the Broncos just have not been in these types of situations, not since really 2016 when they kind of, peed that season down their leg. They were in really good shape late in the year, and unfortunately, just a collapse prevented them from at least just returning to the playoffs after Super Bowl 50. It was a late season collapse, couple of really bad, just rough games. And I think for the Broncos' sake, Cody, we almost should be grateful. They've won 2 games in a row where Bo Nix has thrown a combined 5 interceptions. The offense has not looked sharp, and they've won by double-digit points in both of those games. Well, close. I know the Cleveland game was 9 points.
Well, it's also hard to not go back and do revisionist history. If that field goal attempt for the Broncos against the Chiefs doesn't get blocked, Denver's in the playoffs already, and we're sitting here singing a different tune. Instead, it's like, all right, hey, look, you got the Chargers. Tough team as always when you do it. I don't care who you are. Whenever you play a divisional opponent, the bar gets set a little bit higher for both teams. Even if they're coming off of games on Sunday and they're playing on Thursday night football, they're always tough matchups as is. And we knew just from that first matchup, I think Denver's a different team right now than they were when they faced that Chargers team all the way back there in week 6. But it's still going to be a challenge. The Chargers, obviously, they've been banged up a little bit. They lost J.K. Dobbins to an injury. I'm not sure if he'll be back this week for them, but things have kind of changed with the flow of them. And then defensively, they've also been giving up a lot of yards on the ground, which you and I are going to sit here and say, well, if the Broncos can get the run game going this week, then all of a sudden, things change. But I find it interesting. I think in 2 of the last 4 games, the Chargers have given up 200 yards rushing to an opponent. That's not ideal, right? And for the Broncos, you got to find a way to take advantage of that. I know the secondary for LA is a little bit banged up right now, so find a way to take advantage and get some things going here. But for me, I'm a little more still worried about the Cincinnati game, even though they're 3-6 right now. Denver has to take care of business here on Thursday, plain and simple. Control your destiny. And then I wonder if the stakes, if Denver wins on Thursday night, I wonder if the stakes for that Bengals game changes a little bit. I think at that point, Denver will be playing to try to get the highest seed possible, but that's impacted by obviously the Ravens and the Steelers matchup this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be one of those games that we're really hoping for. I think when you look across the AFC, there's so much shuffling that could still happen, right? I mean, it's very possible that as you look at the standings right now, that Pittsburgh at 10-4, they lose to Baltimore on Sunday, things start to get really, really interesting, don't they? I mean, with that division in particular, you'd have 2 teams at 10-5 going into the final 2 weeks of the season. So what things look like right now are very much subject to change. And hopefully for the Broncos' sake, the better. Although the Broncos are capped at the fifth seed, because obviously the Chiefs have officially won the AFC West yet again this year. I can't remember how many straight seasons it is now, Cody, but it's
9,
too many,
unfortunately.
as far as I'm concerned. 9, yeah, we can't let that get to double digits next year, people. Come on, let's figure it out. But when you look at the AFC right now, it still feels so wide open, even though, Kansas City is 13-1, the Houston Texans locked into that number 4 seed in all likelihood. It's starting to really heat up, and the Broncos have a chance to be one of the best teams in the AFC in very near future here.
Yeah, and it's nuts to think about, once again, the divisions. Like, even if you're in the worst division, you have let's say the Texans, they can lose out and whatnot. They'll finish 9-8 if they lose out the remaining games of their schedule. They're still in at the 4 seed because of their record, because they've already clinched their division. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. When you have 1, 2, 3 teams right now, as we're sitting here, all 9-5, and you're still within 1 game of Pittsburgh. You're still in a couple of games of, obviously, the Buffalo Bills. To me, I think this is where things get a little dicey. But this is, I think, what separates, if you're a playoff team versus a pretender. Can Denver find a way to do just that? Well, even if the Broncos don't win on Thursday, there's still a chance they could clinch the playoffs after Sunday. What does that scenario look like? We'll break that down much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks. And if you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas, and they're offering 2 free picks in the month of December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out, and you can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. They also offer Venmo for deposits and withdrawals. This week, you may be looking at Jared Goff for more than 230 passing yards, Saquon Barkley for more than 1 rushing touchdown. It's quick, it's simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and my friends inside the Prize Picks app. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's happened to me before. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down and to cancel unwanted subscriptions. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year financially. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/locked on. The fourth quarter action of today's episode, Locked On Broncos, is here, and we're going to break down how the Broncos can clinch the playoffs. We all know a win gets you in, but if the Broncos somehow don't win on Thursday Night Football against the Chargers, there's still another scenario present that allows them to clinch a playoff spot after this weekend. What does that look like? That's something that Sayre and I are going to break down here on today's episode of the show. Sayre, I feel like I'd be remiss if we don't talk about, once again, some of the possibilities here, right? There's a couple hypotheticals, and it's kind of fun to envision because it puts the Broncos, I think, in a good position to rise up a little bit, right? If the Broncos win on Thursday Night Football, not only do they clinch a playoff spot, and at that point, they'll more than likely hold the tiebreaker over the Chargers based on conference record with a certain amount of games remaining there. But Denver also has a chance to potentially move up to the 5th seed this weekend. And that would be made possible by a Broncos win if the Ravens lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers and if the Miami Dolphins lose this week as well. If that's the case, if that happens, the Broncos after Sunday could very well be sitting in position as that 5th seed, which would set up if the playoffs were to end then. They would set up a potential matchup there with the Houston Texans, who have been kind of a mid up and down team so far this season. They have they have a good defense. They have good defensive players. But man, how crazy would it be to kind of come full circle in a situation where Denver last year had a chance to go to the playoffs if they could have beat the Houston Texans last year? And now all of a sudden, Sean Payton bringing his quarterback potentially to Houston in round one. If that's the way it ends up playing out, man, that would be a fun, exciting thing to watch.
It really would. And honestly, like getting the 5th seed, that would be, I don't want to disrespect or diminish what the Houston Texans have been able to do this year. I mean, they have the same record as the Denver Broncos right now. And we're really excited about what the Broncos are doing, but it does feel like a little bit like they've underachieved. And you can't help but wonder, if you're the 5th seed Denver Broncos, is that almost the ideal first round matchup? Because if you're the Buffalo Bills, who's the last team that you want to face? Well, you certainly don't want the Baltimore Ravens falling down to the 7th seed, and the Los Angeles Chargers, they're going to play tough late this season. They can run the ball and play defense. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you don't want to be matched up against the Baltimore Ravens again in the postseason right away. I mean, if the Ravens end up at the 6th seed, so Cody, to me, like, this is the ideal type of matchup. The Broncos, I don't think the Broncos want a first round matchup in Buffalo or going to Pittsburgh right away. You could play Pittsburgh later on, maybe, if that ends up happening. Go get Russell Wilson and those guys. But man, if you're the 5th seed, you don't have to necessarily go to Baltimore. You don't have to go to Buffalo. You don't have to go to Pittsburgh. You get to go to Houston and play a team that has a young quarterback and that has frankly struggled a little bit this year. So that is something that's worth this team fighting for. Now, I kind of teased earlier a really weird scenario in which the Broncos win against the Colts may not end up mattering. Like, this is kind of an out there scenario. But if the Broncos and the Colts and the Dolphins all finish with the exact same record, because the Colts beat the Dolphins and the Broncos beat the Colts and the Broncos didn't play the Dolphins, it would cause a scenario in which a 3-way tie would be determined based on conference record and not head-to-head matchups. And so I thought that was maybe one of the dumbest things I had heard all day on Tuesday, Cody, when somebody brought that up to me, because I saw the playoff scenarios and it was like, well, if the Broncos don't win on Sunday, Dolphins lose, Bengals lose, and Colts lose, and the Broncos are still in. That seems pretty straightforward. And I got to thinking, like, why does it matter what happens to the Colts game? Because the Colts can't finish with a better record than Denver at this point, even if the Broncos lose out and they win out. But that particular scenario would lead to the Broncos having a worse conference record than both the Dolphins and Colts, in which case it would be a tiebreaker between the Colts and Dolphins, which would give the Colts the last playoff spot. I mean, it's got to be one of the most bizarre. You talk about your frustration with the teams that just get in based on winning divisions. I mean, that right there would be the ultimate, because the number one trump card in playoff seeding has always been head-to-head win. Like, if you beat a team, you are in above that team. That's the ultimate trump card. Apparently, in this particular instance, that wouldn't matter.
Did this change because they added an additional wild card spot a couple years ago? Is that maybe the line of thinking there? Because
maybe.
I mean, that's tough. I love that they've added it. Ironically, you know what they should do? The NFL should just get bold. Add an 8 spot, right? 1 seed versus 8 seed. No first round buys for anybody. 1st seed versus 8 seed. 2nd seed versus 7th seed. 3rd seed versus 6th seed, and then 4th versus 5th. You know how fun that would be? And you know what? The NFL, guess what? Listen to me. It would make you so much money. Forget the first round buys. You're making these guys play an additional regular season game anyways. Take away that. Give them 2 buys in the course of the regular season. And then everyone in the playoffs, everybody plays. I like that idea a little bit more. And I think it would make things very interesting, because if you look at it, it would be interesting, because Kansas City, if that were the model today, Kansas City would host the Indianapolis Colts. Buffalo would then host the Los Angeles Chargers. The Pittsburgh Steelers would host the Denver Broncos, and then Houston would host Baltimore at that point. Why not? Make it fun. Make it exciting. You got the college football playoffs expanding to a 12-team format. Add an additional wildcard spot if you're going to add an additional regular season game, which is apparently something that could be coming in the next couple of years here for the NFL. It's something the NFLPA will have to agree on. But why not change it a little bit? You're going to add an additional regular season game, make the stakes fun for the end, and change it to where it's not just based on division anymore. It's based on record. I think that's got to be probably the most important factor here. They should throw that wrinkle in there. I'm advocating for it.
100%. They should, and absolutely, it should be based on record. I mean, that's still, it's so weird to me that a 7-win team, a team that's 7-10, could get into the playoffs, and a team that's 10-7 could get left out the same year just because the 7-10 team won their division. I mean, we've seen teams recently get in with losing records to the playoffs. It's crazy. So I don't like the way that they do it right now. And Cody, I think that it's absolutely a situation to where, man, if you win a certain amount of games, you are guaranteed to get into the playoffs. Like maybe that's like a tiebreaker or something. Is if, hey, you won your division, but you're 7-10 or 8-9. If there's a 10-win team out there, they get precedence over your team.
They should. And how many times have we seen that happen, though? I think it's been a couple times as of late where a team that had a losing record but won their division because it was the worst division in all of football is there. I think the worst division in all of football this year is certainly the AFC South. And of course, the Texans have a winning record right now. No one's trying to dispute that. But when you look at that division, it's been rough. You can make an argument, I think, for the, outside of the Eagles and the Commanders, the NFC East is pretty bad with the Cowboys and the Giants. The AFC East, really outside of Buffalo, has been pretty terrible this year. So why not change things up a little bit? I think it would certainly make things interesting here as well. And look, Broncos Country, if you're an NFL fan that's somehow tuning into this show, we appreciate you for rocking with us here. Make sure you chime in on your thoughts. If the NFL is going to add an additional 18th regular season game, do you think that do you think that the NFL should expand the playoff format, which at this point, the Broncos would already be in? I know we're kind of advocating for that because Denver would be in. Denver's got a chance to do it anyways. If they win, they'll take care of business. But curious for your thoughts on it. I think that's a valid question we should put out there here to everyone in Broncos Country. But with that said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the show, Broncos Country. Denver hoping to get as healthy as possible for Thursday night football. Them and the Chargers, both teams are banged up a little bit. But one thing is clear. Broncos win. They are in to bring you the biggest preview of the matchup. Sayre Bedinger is going to sit down with the Locked On Chargers guys to preview the matchup. And on top of that, you can get an NFL squad episode as well. There won't be one next week because of the holiday season. So if you could gift your favorite team a gift for Christmas, what would it be? We'll break that down and much more here. Fun episodes this week here. Locked On Broncos, playoffs at stake. Let's get after it.